want to talk about exhaustion. This is something that I think in some capacity we all know. We know this feeling. I'm talking about it today in particular because I feel tired. I feel exhausted. And what do we do? How do we move forward when we're exhausted? I think sometimes exhaustion can come from, and in my particular case, I think it does come from working too hard and not remembering to take rest. This is an old habit of mine. I think I get it from my dad, who gets it from his dad. Not knowing how or when to take rest. And how do we do that? Also, how do we recognize the signs that we are exhausted? In particular, for me, I know when I start to feel like I want to drink coffee. I stopped drinking coffee years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, mostly because of a stomach problem. But every once in a while when I get really exhausted and I feel like I can't even get through the day, I find myself wanting coffee, which is a sign for me that, okay, I'm running out of steam. Also, I get headaches or I just start to lose focus. Like I walk into a room and I forget why I'm in the room. I pick up my phone to do something and then I find that I've done something else instead, and then I'm thinking, what was it that I picked up my phone to do? Or at work, I have a hard time focusing. Sometimes my thoughts are fragmented. These are all signs to me that I'm exhausted, meaning I'm running out of fuel. I'm running out of energy. And I think what comes to my mind often is balance. I'm in a place where I'm trying to build a practice, trying to build a private practice. I'm trying to build my center as a mindfulness practitioner, trying to grow this podcast to reach more people. Then everything that I'm trying to go through, how I'm trying to advance personally in my personal life. And there are all these different things that take up our energy. And how do we balance? How do we balance this with rest? For me, it's paying attention to these indicators. I'm starting to get a headache. My thoughts are starting to be fragmented. I'm starting to fall asleep earlier or not sleep through the night. There are indicators that maybe we're taking on too much. And then how do we make adjustments to get ourselves back in line? Meaning, it's kind of like if there's a child walking along a path and he starts to go off into the woods. One of my old supervisors used to always say, when we were working with clients, it's like, are they going off into the woods and how do we help them come back? It's like tuning into these indicators. What are the indicators for you? For me, it's, wanting more coffee, having headaches, fragmented thoughts, losing focus, feeling tired. What are your indicators that maybe you're taking on too much? And how do you take rest? But also, I use the word balance because it wouldn't be helpful to just shut down and just take a permanent rest. Just lay in bed and get nothing done for days, weeks. Sometimes maybe you need a day where you just rest for that day. But how do we continue to do the things that life is asking of us? How do we tend to our families, tend to our jobs, tend to our friendships, our social relationships? How do we tend to ourselves? How do we do all of this? We all have a pie chart of time that we have in our life, in our experience, and there's only so much we can dedicate to each thing. how do we notice when one thing is taking up too much of the pie chart and make adjustments? For me, that might mean, trying to sit for 20 minutes in the morning to give myself some rest. But one of the main reasons I'm doing this podcast here today is because the past 2 days, I feel like I need to take rest, and for me that means solace in sitting in meditation. But I've sat in meditation yesterday and today, and it was very foggy, very much unable to be in awareness. And yesterday, in the middle of my meditation, I drifted into a fog and then into sleep. And today, when I was meditating, I drifted into a fog, and I was just kind of in this foggy place, and then thoughts are running through my mind. So I'm sharing that sometimes the practice is not, it's not always easy. I've talked often about how it's a simple practice, but it's not always easy, and sometimes there's a fogginess and fragmented thoughts, and it's hard. And maybe for me that means I don't need meditation today. Maybe it means I need to rest. Maybe going to bed an hour earlier, or taking a day off, taking a half a day off. Maybe it means watching The Office, sitting and having a bowl of popcorn and watching The Office, because that is restful for me. Because when I laugh, it is rejuvenating. So rest doesn't necessarily mean sleeping. It means doing something that is rejuvenating for you. A lot of times, what may get in the way of this is money. I want to get a massage, but I can't afford it. Or I want to go on vacation, but I can't afford it. But it doesn't have to cost money. It can be, how do we start to take rest just in our own presence? So I think what it means is, if we sit in meditation, if we feel like we're fragmented and we're unfocused, and we sit in meditation and there's a fogginess, maybe what we need is rest. Maybe in that moment we don't need meditation. How do we understand that? How do we balance that as well? There have been so many times when I teach classes, either the 7-hour retreat class in the MBSR curriculum, or just a long mindfulness class that I'm teaching, and people will reflect at the end of the class and say, I didn't do it right because I basically just kept falling into fogginess or sleep, and I wanted this to be an aware time. I wanted to be practicing meditation this whole time, but I just fell asleep. I just went into fogginess. I wasn't even there. And what I'll say is, maybe you just needed rest. Maybe you didn't need meditation. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're exhausted. How do we tend to that as well? It's not separate from the mindfulness practice to sleep when tired. In fact, in one of my retreats, one of the main phrases that I took with me after the retreat is, when the bird is tired, it sleeps. Meaning, sometimes you see a bird and it's just resting. Actually, in one of my offices, there's a pigeon that sits outside the window. I think of him as the grandfather pigeon because he looks older, and while all the other ones are flying around, he's just sitting, resting. And that pigeon knows that pigeon knows how to be mindful. He knows when to take rest. So how to recognize when we need rest and how to allow that for ourselves. Okay. Take care.